And as we come to the end of the sprint, and before we finish the sprint, we want to do a sprint retrospective, an opportunity for continuous improvement. It brings everything together beautifully, and we're going to spend this video going through how we do that and where it sits in it all. Whenever I am teaching the retrospectives, or before I start a retrospective, I always like to come back to this quote. Norman Kurth published a book called Project Retrospectives, and he starts off that book by quoting A.A. Mills' Winnie the Pooh. And right at the beginning of that book, it says, "Here is Edward Bear, coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head, behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels there really is another way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it." And I think that really is setting the tone beautifully for what we want to do with our retrospectives and why they're so important. Because if we don't take time out to stop and think and reflect, it's difficult then to ever improve. And as we mentioned in the sprint review in a previous video, the retrospective is a place where, again, it is a positive environment. It is where we're helping each other, where we're working together to achieve better results and better outcomes. So the Scrum Guide mentions this. It talks about the purpose of the sprint retrospective is to plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness, and this focus on quality and effectiveness, I think, is absolutely right. So who should be there? Typically, it's the Scrum team. So by this we mean the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the team doing the work. And what they do is they inspect and adapt what happened in the last sprint with regards to individuals, interactions, processes, and tools. And those are the sort of the main four things that we start focusing on. And all of this comes from the Agile Manifesto. Principle number 12 says, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. So again, not just a part of the Scrum framework, but part of any framework that is within the Agile umbrella. Those of us who have read or come across The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, of course, this ties neatly into the 7th habit that he recommends, which is the habit of sharpening the saw. This idea that we are, again, continuously making sure that we're sharp and that we're ready for doing things. And I like Abraham Lincoln's quote here. He says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." I don't think he's referring here to planning, because obviously we know that in terms of planning, we want to get started right away, and then we take time to plan as we're going along. But here we're talking about making sure that we are fresh and that we take time out to make sure that we bring our best possible selves to the project, to the thing that we're working on. If we do that, then we do get through things a lot quicker. If we're tired and exhausted and maybe caught in some patterns, it's harder to do that. So this is why I like this quote, but anyway, with so many quotes, easy to misinterpret sometimes. So let's look at pulling all of this together. What is the purpose? The purpose, as we mentioned, is to inspect how things have gone in those 4 areas: people, relationships, processes, and tools. And what we're identifying, what we're discussing, and what we're putting into some order is what went well and what the areas are for improvement. Really important to spend time talking about what went well as well. It's not just about what didn't go so well. And then what we do is we create a plan for improvements. And the recommendation is to take one idea, one area for improvement into the next sprint, into the next 2-week cycle. If we do that, that item becomes part of the product backlog. So it is time, we need to devote some time to that as we would to any other element of the work that we're doing in the sprint. And just by taking one item in every 2 weeks, of course, the cumulative effect of that is very significant. Within 3 months, within 6 months, we have done so many new things and get so much better at improving the items. But again, they go into the product backlog and we select them, and we should pick at least one item to work on the next sprint. So a few rules to think about when we're thinking about the retrospective. The first one is that everyone is equal. There should be no hierarchy in the conversations, in the way we're treating each other in a retrospective, and trust is paramount. We really need to get to that point where we have trust. When we start, typically I find a new team coming together, or new people, members of the team coming together. The first 2, maybe 3 retrospectives maybe aren't quite as fluid as they can be or they could be. But certainly as we build trust together, as we see that we are looking to create that positive environment and that we're actually delivering on our results, we're taking something into the sprint and delivering against it, that trust increases and we come to retrospectives with a much more positive attitude. And on that point, we want to make sure that there are no amygdala hijacks. We're not saying or doing anything that interferes with someone's emotion, which interferes with people's emotions. And of course, part of that is no finger pointing. There's no they, it's all us. We are doing this together. I think it's good to get to a point where anything at all can be discussed. And as trust builds, we find that that's easier and easier to do. It is also important to mix things up, to make it interesting. We don't want people thinking that this becomes a chore. It should be something that should be new and exciting regularly and continuously. And there are some techniques that we can use to use different themes, mix things up and make things interesting. There are no real rules around this. When I'm when I'm working with people and I'm introducing retrospectives, again, there are no rules. One of the rules is there's no real rules. It's not about anything that's being fixed. Again, with this, we need to be pragmatic and maybe within the retrospective, talk about how the retrospective is going itself and what we can do to change all of that. So some of the traits that we see, it's positive, it's enjoyable, it must be effective, productive, collaborative, reflective, and of course, above all, lightweight, making sure that we are not getting bogged down in things, that we can move quickly and easily, and not get lost in trying to solve everything all at once. It's something that we will come back to regularly. One of the going back to Norman Kurth, one thing that he talks about in his book is this approach to retrospectives. Regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did their best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, and the resources available. And I think we are hopefully all working together in that spirit and in that environment where we all are truly doing our absolute best to get the best outcomes for our customers, for our users, and for stakeholders. So just 4 quick points to end on. We typically will time box the event, normally 2 hours for a 2-week sprint. We take the time to reflect on what we can improve. And important, it's a positive event. This is not a post-mortem. This is something that we need to look forward to, not fear. And the aim, as we've said before, take one thing and deliver that one thing.